And hello to everybody. Welcome to episode 34. Good old 34 of the Get Out of Your Comfort Zone podcast. Today, we are going to be talking with my friend Farley. Hello, Farley. How's it going?
Hello, it's going good.
Hell yeah. Uh, I'm really excited for today's episode because it is very unique in a lot of ways, and I haven't met anybody like Farley, and so I'm very excited to be a part of sharing his story um, with you. And so, with that, Farley, would you like to begin by telling us the story of how you and I met?
Yeah, so we met at the center, which is a tea house slash yoga studio that has since been closed, but it's a great, it was for a long time a really great place for community and connection, I think, and yeah, um, that's where we met. Wait, should I tell the story of the party that we met at?
Yeah, please
Okay,
make it more
so
illustrious.
so
Paint us
the
a picture with your words, mate.
I think it was a Christmas party, and uh, there were a bunch of people there. And I met Lion, and Lion was wearing a sheer negligee with a pair of panties underneath and nothing else. and um, and I don't know, that was pretty eye catching. But when I eventually met him and talked with him, he was super friendly and sweet, and we became friends. And I don't remember what we talked about, but that was a memorable first meeting. Especially, I think, because no one else was dressed that way, and also the center is it's a yoga studio, and there are a lot of I think compared to other third spaces that I have been in, there's I think a lot more women there. It's a very like female friendly space, and no one seemed put off by the way he was dressed at all. And so I don't know. I was just like I could tell that there was a lot of acceptance for the type of expression, and it was fun. I don't know.
Hell yeah. Made quite the impression. Thank you for that, Farley. So, you had a very interesting upbringing. In your own words, you grew up in a cult in Northern California
Mm,
where you felt like you were isolated and socially stunted, and then eventually depressed as a result. And you shared some coping mechanisms. You talked about some of your siblings' coping mechanisms, and you grew up in a big family, with some big age differences between the two waves of children.
mm,
Um, and you talk a lot about your father and how he is someone who touts the values of independence and self-reliance. However, growing up, you did not feel like you were shown as much how to be independent and self-reliant and emotionally self-sufficient, and like how to financially, um, like earn for yourself to basically go out on your own and thrive.
mm.
And so, could you begin by telling us the story of and painting us a picture, of what it was like growing up in your household with your siblings, being homeschooled, and how you coped, you know? Basically, your time period until, you moved out.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So that's really broad. Okay. So if I leave anything out, please
Not
let me
to
know.
worry, I got
Um,
you.
so grew up in it was a very large family. I'm one of nine kids, so there was eight of us. And the age range is approximately 15 years from the oldest to the youngest. Uh,
Mm,
and It's an extremely religious uh, family situation. My parents are, as aforementioned, a part of a cult, and they took it very, very seriously. There's a lot of so it's a Christian, but I think the best way to paint the picture is to say imagine like the classical sort of Mormon uh, aesthetic, and it was very, very close to that. Just homeschooled, K through 12. I never went to school, and also heavy indoctrination in our schooling and the types of things we were allowed to access to make sure that everything was religious, coded. There was a lot of anti-science stuff, although I sort of picked which things that were very, 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 very much tried to emphasize things like evolution isn't real, and also a lot of stuff along that lines. The Earth is only 6,000 years old. That was pretty prominent, and a lot of religious fundamentalism. Uh, okay, let's see. Growing up in such a large family, without going to school, we didn't really have any other people that we hung out with. I think we had a church group, but
mm,
definitely didn't spend as much time with them as you would want to sort of like develop socially. And
mm,
so people often say like, well, you grew up in a large family, so you had people to talk to, which is sort of true, but when it's just the same people all the time, and also they're the people that you live with, there's not a lot to talk about. A, but also B, it was a very large age range. So even though there's nine of us total, I live in the like the bottom half of the children. I'm
mm,
number seven, and so. Uh, Even though there's so many of us, it was definitely not like we had like friends or to put this in perspective, like you probably wouldn't hang out when you are like in middle school with someone who is 5 to 10 years older than you. And
mm,
so that was exactly the case with me and my siblings. So really, even though there's eight of us, really it was more like I only had like one friend, which was my younger brother, and then everyone else was like too far out of age range. And yeah, so it's just like extremely isolating and sort of like devoid of stimulus kind of environment. We were Yeah, we didn't have television, although we were allowed to watch movies, especially later on. My parents went through like different stages of like what kinds of things they thought were important to restrict in our lives. And in the beginning, especially for my older siblings, it was much more intense. They wouldn't let them listen to any music at all that wasn't Christian and or worship music. And
mm,
also really restricted what kinds of like books and media they would be able to have access to. And then they kind of relaxed on that over time. By the time that I was in high school, they were allowing us to listen to music. But but my older siblings, that was never the case. They never were allowed to listen to music.
mm,
And yeah, so let's see. So I think like yes about coping mechanisms. So I think we were all like extremely understimulated and also I think depressed. although I don't think any of us really had the context to know at the time that we were. Uh, and I know that we were allowed to read books, and I was addicted to novels for probably my entire life before I was an adult. I was
Mm,
reading books, especially as a child when I was like 12 years old. I was reading books for like 6 to 8 hours a day, and I probably read
mm.
like 1,000 books as a child. But it was mostly as an escape mechanism, trying to not be present because there wasn't really anything to be present for. And uh, yeah, yeah, it was kind of just like a lot of boredom and also just like a lot of arrested development, like out of our hands. Like we weren't put in a place where we could develop socially, and also like uh, yeah, just like a lot of social context stuff that was just never couldn't pick up on it because it wasn't there.
So I'm curious, considering what a voracious reader you were, is there any novel series that comes to you that, you were really into? What are a few, if you care to share, if you remember that time?
Uh, from my childhood, honestly, I don't think I want to share from my childhood because the breadth of books that I read at that point wasn't even that great because even though we like reading was one of my primary escapes. We didn't still didn't have that access to that many books. We went to the library sometimes, but not really often enough. There was still a lot of boredom, even though we were reading so much. And but I definitely I am still a big reader and have read a lot in my adult life, especially audiobooks. That's primarily how I consume now. And the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown is amazing. So good. It's like it technically a space opera, I think. It's about uh actually I don't know if I want to get into what it's
Wait,
about, but it's
this
amazing.
this isn't from your childhood though.
No,
Okay.
if you want like the one of the main book series that I read from my childhood,
Yeah,
there's a Redwall book series. It's about like sort of like medieval times, animal characters who like go on adventures and I don't know, fight with swords and stuff.
Redwall.
Those are pretty entertaining. But that was probably like one of my favorite things when I was a kid. Yeah,
Red Wall.
yeah, Redwall.
Red Wall. All right,
Yeah.
listeners, audience members, book series recommendation. All right. Well, so you're growing up in this household
Mm.
and you are homeschooled for through high school, right? And you aren't really taught how to be independent. You haven't really had a job at this point. And then something happens and you get kicked out of your house. And so tell us the story of what happened and basically how you managed to survive and a few of the miracles that, well, you know what? We can always come back as a second part, but to begin with, yeah, tell us a story of how you got kicked out and, what was the story? What did you do? How did you survive? Go ahead.
So I was 19, just turned 19, and my dad kicked me out of the house for wearing holy jeans. So I had a pair of jeans with some holes in them, and at the time that was the style, and I had always wanted a pair of holy jeans, and I finally got some, and I was wearing them, and eventually one day my dad, I think he had neglected to notice for a few weeks, I think on purpose, because he knew if he did notice, then he would have to do something about it. Like,
Mm,
but also I think I was old enough at the time, and I think he had sort of been thinking about kicking me out anyway. And so he was like, he used these holy jeans as an excuse to kick me out. Um, but um, but yeah, so I didn't have anything to do or anywhere to go at the time. I had a car, I had a Toyota Corolla. So I knew that there was this mega church up in Redding, California, Northern California. And so I drove up there and I lived out of my car for 2 years.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, yeah, that's what happened.
okay. Um, Living in your car for those 2 years, um, from what you've shared, was not easy, especially because of what we talked about earlier about you never really having a job, and not being taught, sort of um, some of the important skills. And so that inadvertently led to some hard times while you were living in your car
Yeah,
and some periods of destitution and desperate times. Um, can you tell us a story of, um, that miracle that you were telling me about, when you were like almost out of money?
so okay, for context,
Yeah.
I was 19 years old and had
Mm,
like zero ability to make friends or meet people or any really sort of knowledge about like how to live and interact in the world. Um, Theoretically, you can get a job and support yourself. And that was also theoretically true for me, but in practice, it wasn't really true. I had crippling, intense social anxiety. No idea how to apply for a job. No idea how to like really do almost anything. I moved into my car and moved up to Reading. So when I was growing up, my parents liked camping, and then also they rolled us in the Boy Scouts. So we were doing Boy Scout stuff, and the main takeaway from that was basically I knew how to camp. I knew how to do camping style stuff, and so when I moved into my car, it was a lot like camping, and I knew how to do that. So honestly, moving into the car was the least stressful part about those years when I was living in Reading. It was definitely not like pleasant, I think, to live in a car, but it wasn't like the worst thing. The worst thing was that like I had no idea how to talk to anyone. I had no friends, no ability to make friends, and also like a lot of ideology that sort of prevented me from wanting to do that because of the isolationism that I grew up with. We had been taught like uh, both explicitly and implicitly to basically never seek out or make friends with or talk with anyone who wasn't part of our cult. So
mm,
I moved up there to be at this church, and that ostensibly would have been like my community, but I had no
mm,
ability to like make friends. So I really floundered, really hard. And for the first year I was there, I don't think I talked to or made friends with anyone. And there were definitely several times when I was like having like daily nervous breakdowns, like
mm,
just like incredibly stressed. And I developed psoriasis during that time, just because from all the stress. But so I never got a job, and and then honestly by the grace of God, I don't believe in God, but I use that as an expression because I consider it to be miraculous. I ran into a family friend on one of the first weeks. Like it was probably the first or second week I was up there, and she was like inquiring to see how I was doing, what I was up to, and I was like, sharing what I was like, yeah, I'm living in my car and blah blah blah. And then she was like, oh, so you're not going to go to school because she knew I had just graduated high school,
mm,
and I was like, no, I had no plans to do anything like that. And she was like, you should go to college, and and I'm profoundly grateful for her and for that. Um, she sat with me one day for like, so she was actually a teacher, I think. She taught high school, and
Mm,
for her, it was like a trivial thing, just like helping somebody enroll in college. It probably took like 4 hours, but for me, that was like a really beautiful thing. Um, in retrospect, I'm really grateful for that. Yeah, um, so I enrolled in school, um, and I was like 2 weeks late to the start of the semester, and
mm,
um, or maybe more. It was a crazy thing. It was a crazy thing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to school now. So I went to school. I applied for and got financial aid, and that financial aid for school was like a big part of my ability to survive while living in my
mm,
car, because I think they give you something like 4 to 5 grand a semester or maybe a year, to go to school in California, and as financial aid. And for me, that was just like enough money to bear to eke by, while I was living in my car. So that was a big part of like how I survived. And then also just like going to school, obviously profoundly like helpful and useful thing. I learned a lot. I didn't really make friends at school at first, and I never did at the community college. I really had no ability to make friends, but at least I was learning stuff, and that was really helpful.
mm,
I think it was my first experience actually learning useful things, and not just like I mean, in high school, it's debatable how much of what you learn is actually useful in adulthood. But in college, it's much less like that. There's still a lot of things that are like not that useful, but there was a lot of things like I took my first like biology class where I actually like I think got a realistic perspective on like what biology is, and
mm,
there's a lot of experiences like that where it's like I think my first adult experience, and and yeah, and then also during that time, I was going to this church, and I made a friend at a Bible study who knew about my situation, and she connected me with an elderly couple who they helped pay for some of my food at a local cafeteria, and they were just I think they were looking for a place to sort of like help and do good in young people's lives. And I think I met with them like twice or something. And they asked me like, we had a conversation, but they asked me like, what were my grades like? And before getting to college, I actually thought that I was pretty dumb.
mm,
I didn't know that I am a little bit smarter than average. Until I got to college, like because of how my education was growing up, my parents didn't really care about education at all. Really, and this was like their attitude throughout was basically like the only reason you need to read is so that you can read the Bible. My dad said that a lot of different times.
mm,
So that was like really his attitude was just like you don't really need to know things. You just need to know like spiritual things. And uh, so they asked me about my grades, and I had been sort of like skating through school in high school without knowing that, without any context, you know.
mm,
Uh, and so when I got to college, I think a little bit pleasantly surprised to find that I wasn't actually like really stupid. I was like moderately smart. Like I could do college without a lot of effort, but also I don't, anyway, so they asked me about my grades, and I told them, and then they were happy with my grades. They thought that I was doing well enough that like I wasn't like gonna drop out of school, or like I
mm,
wasn't putting in zero effort, and so they paid for my food, and that was also like a really big help. There were a lot of things though during that time that you asked about like miracles, and I feel like there were a lot of things that during that time that in retrospect I consider to be just like I'm crazy surprised that I made it. There was a lot of things that could have gone wrong, and Uh, yeah, grateful.
Mm, hell yeah. Um, thank you for that. And so moving forward, that period of living in your car lasted a couple of years, and then at some point you moved back home for some time before moving out again to live in your own. And when you did, um, you were, a bit more well adjusted to society because one of the things that you mentioned when you moved back home is you started working at Applebee's and working in the service industry and having to do service, social interactions and social growth and picking up on social cues. That's like a, you know um, unavoidable part of the job. So I'm sure that in some ways that served you well. um, and so, fast forwarding to when you ventured out on your own again, right? And um, wherever you are, um, paint us a picture of what your life looked like, when you left home again, and take us into the story of how you ended up in your first relationship. Because your first, what I remember is the first time you kissed anybody, just to for the audience to have a sense of like the circumstances of your life and you know what you were talking about, the how you felt socially stunted. You didn't experience your first kiss until you were 26, and your first um, real relationship was, I think, at 28. Um, and um, you know, though there's nothing wrong with that at all, and it's very normal in some parts of the world for that to be the norm. I think in our society here in the US and in the West, the average, tends to be lower. So, yeah, help us understand, what your life looked like when you left home for the second time and how that segued into your first relationship.
Yeah, okay, so for context,
Mm,
when I was in community college, at first I was studying music because in high school, one of the very few things that I did that I was proud of was I played a classical piano a bit. And
whoa, nice.
yeah, uh, but again, for context, there was a lot of like doing things without knowing why you do them. And so I did the classical piano because my parents wanted me to. They
Mm,
thought that it would be a good thing, and they made all of my siblings play music. So we all
mm,
played either the piano or the violin or guitar. But it was one of those things where it was very performative. They thought it would be good for us, and we did it. But I don't think any of us liked it, and I definitely didn't like it either. But again, like no context. So when I got to college, it was one of the only things I'd ever done that I was
mm,
good at. Not saying I liked it. I don't think I ever did, but it was one of the only things I did that I was good at. So when I got to college, I was like, I guess I'll do music because it's one of the only things I've done. And that was like a big mistake and a huge waste of time. I got an associate's degree in music, and it was like I wish I could take all of that effort back because never wanted to do it. And even halfway through the music degree, I knew I didn't want to do it, but I didn't know what else I wanted to do. I had no context, no awareness of what other things there were to do. Again, just like incredibly stunted, socially isolated. So after that experience, I did move back home for about 2 more years, and I took a gap year to try and figure out what I wanted to do. And then through process of elimination, I was like, I know I like technical stuff. I like computers. Maybe I'll do computer science. And so I changed my major to computer science. I went back to a community college for a year. Then I went to a couple of online schools. I was in school altogether for 6 years, and school did not work well for me. There's a lot of mistakes that were made along the way about on various levels, just like I guess indecisiveness. I also switched schools a few times and lost credits every time I did that. And also,
Mm,
at one point, I had an academic advisor that I think advised me very poorly, and
mm,
I think I wasted a good like 9 months, sort of like taking classes that were like too hard for me because my academic advisor allowed me to do it. And uh, anyway, so like long story short, in I want to say 2015, maybe 2016, I was a computer science student who was struggling really hard, and I got an internship at a local software company to do web development, and I think also is a thing that I consider to be like almost miraculous, considering that
mm,
uh, it was like I think it's literally the only software company in the area that I was. I was in Yuba City at the time, which is a small town in basically agricultural Northern California, and there aren't software companies there. So it was a really small company, and the guy who owned it was just a really generous person, and he let me come and be an intern. I worked really hard
mm,
for 3 months learning web development, and then they hired me on as a web developer after that. And it became really clear in the short time that I was there that I was learning so much more on the job than I was in school. That school was kind of a
mm,
joke by comparison. And so I dropped out of school and did that. I was there for a year, and then I moved to Sacramento after that to get my first software job in Sacramento, and that was like a big step up in terms of pay and also like quality of life. And so at this point, I was 27 years old, and uh, so okay, another like sort of branch of context is that I was in Reading for 3 years total. I was in school for like two and a half of those years, I think. I got an associate's degree in music, and I made some friends at that time at that church, but also not a lot. I came back home and I was very introverted for like almost 2 years. I didn't have almost any friends. Then I made some friends locally in Yuba City, and again like, but they were just friends like because of the way that the cult structures like romantic relationships. There's basically no purpose of having a romantic relationship unless you intend to get married, and also no reason to want to be married because you would never sort of like meet people in like a context where you might explore romantic sort of like connections. It's just like very isolating and silly. It's like very sort of like chicken and egg sort of problem where you can't do either. So it's a catch 22. And so I never had any romantic relationships or connections. And then when I was 26 years old, I was really starting to feel the weight of that. I had been for a long time, just feeling super lonely. And I think I'm a people person. I love people,
mm,
and also I could feel, even though like never in my life had I had like a lot of friends or any romantic connections, I always had wanted it, and also felt like powerfully the absence of it. And so I realized at one point I was just like, God isn't gonna bring me a spouse the way they tell me that He is. I need to go and get one. And
mm,
so I like thought about it and prayed about it for a long time, and eventually realized that I need to like start like trying to date. So eventually started trying to date some of these church girls that were around. which is very bottom of the barrel experience. There were not a lot of church girls to pick from in the first place, and so I went on some dates and eventually had my first kiss when I was 26.
Mm.
Then the following year, I was 27. I moved to Sacramento, got my first software job, and also was dating more. Started using the dating apps for the first time, and still only dating Christian girls because I was still, deep in the cult. And eventually, I got my first like real relationship. I met this girl, and we hit it off instantly. So
Mm.
another bit of context is that I'm a nerd. I'm very nerdy. This is like I think a large part of the reason why I like software. I've always loved all kinds of engineering, and I really fit in well with that card. I also love science, and even though because of the way the cult was, there's a lot of science that they sort of deny, and I was on that page. I was denying a lot of science, but also still really loved science,
Yeah.
and so I met this girl, and I don't know. I'm just profoundly grateful for meeting her. We fell in love, and we actually, I think we were like a really good match in terms of like our personalities and our passions. She loves science. I love science. We really connected on a lot of levels. She was hilarious. She was super funny, and I fell totally in love with her. And
Mm.
but like for context, I this was not just my first time falling in love. I think this was my first time ever meeting somebody that I liked. Does that make
Mm.
sense? Like, and I don't just mean romantically. I mean like, period. Like having people who were the way I was. Like
Mm.
smart, interested in education, interested in uh, using your intelligence to do things. This is another tangent, but something I
Tangents are good. Please proceed.
uh, something that I love about living in San Francisco as compared to, so I grew up in Yuba City, moved to Sacramento, spent almost all of my life there. And then coming to San Francisco, something that I love and it's palpable the difference is how many people are not just educated but want to use their intelligence to do interesting and I don't know, it's just to do stuff. Like and so this is a common complaint that I have that I tell people is that like it when you get farther away from San Francisco, what you find is often that it's not that people are less intelligent, definitely not, or less educated even. Although there's probably more educated people around here, but it's that people want to use their intelligence and their education to do stuff. And when you get further away, often you find that like that is not the case. People are very interested, like very sort of complacent and not ambitious, not wanting to do ventures, like people want a house, a family, a dog, and access to nature often, and that's all that they want. That's it. That's the extent of their ambition, and they're fine with that. And I've never been fine with that. And also, I find that often, like here in San Francisco, you find people who are not. They're just like ambitious people. And so when I met that girl and fell in love, she's ambitious. She was
Mm.
a pre med student studying to become a doctor, and she was ambitious, and we just like clicked on so many levels. And I realized for the first time that I'm also ambitious. And then she broke up with me. It was a short relationship. It really only lasted long enough for me to like fall head over heels in love, and
Mm.
then it ended uh, essentially because I was in a cult. And she was like, dude, it's not working. Like our values don't align. Up to that point, like I had never been around anyone who was ambitious or wanted to use their intelligence to do anything. And
Yeah.
so I was never like that. I had never been exposed to it. And so there's just like a lot of like values mismatches. Like I hadn't to that point like really cared about education or career. Like except for like I did care about them, but not. It wasn't like a primary concern. For her it was a primary concern, and there's a lot of other things where it's just like she was just like, yeah, you're just not on the same path as I am, and I was like, well,
Mm.
and and also like to that point, like I was not on that path at all, and didn't even know that I wanted to be. And in meeting her, she's like I learned a lot, about not just it wasn't just like my first romantic experience. I think it was also just like my first exposure to like the life that I want to have. My first time seeing somebody living the life that I want to have. Um,
Mm.
so it was like it was very impactful, and so she broke it off, and that was very painful. Not just for losing her though, it was because like I realized for the first time that there's a life that I want to have, and I wasn't having it at all. And also, it was like I was on the opposite path. I was moving away from it, and
Mm.
and uh, and then she broke up with me, and because of that, there was a lot of pain and also like a lot of like reckoning. I just like started to question all of the stuff from the cult a lot for the first time, and
Yeah.
eventually it took kind of a while, about 9 months, but eventually walked away from my faith, and then I fell into a deep black depression, and that was a hard time. I was very very hopeless. I I had been so she broke up with me, and I thought maybe if I got a better job, she might want me.
Mm.
So so I worked really hard for almost a year to get a better job. I learned a lot of new job skills, and I got a better job. And then, but by that time, she wasn't interested. She was already in another relationship,
Mm.
and then the pandemic hit, and so I got the job. Pandemic hit, and I lost my job again, or at least just like there were factors that changed. It was at a startup, and the startup was not really that stable, and they offered to let me keep my job, but at a dramatically lower pay, and I was like, no, I'm not
Mm.
interested. And then so I was going to start, trying to find a new job. And I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I was just like, why am I working so hard? I don't think there's a future for me. And so yeah, and then I had like a year of really bad times. I started sleeping a lot.
Mm.
I slept for like 15 hours a day for
Mm.
9 months, and I was really hopeless. I was just like, and another thing for context is that at where I'd been living at the time in Sacramento,
Mm.
there just weren't a lot of people who were like me, and and I knew from a little bit of experience that finding people that are like me is kind of rare and difficult there.
Mm.
And I didn't really live in San Francisco yet, so I didn't really know that it's really not here. It's much much easier. Again, it's not a matter of intelligence or education. It's more just like the interest, the attitude, like people who are ambitious, who want to accomplish big things, who want more than what they have, and so because I didn't know any better, I was, I think at the time, sort of justified in thinking that I probably was never going to find somebody else that I would be romantically interested, or much more likely like that would be romantically interested in me because of my dramatic, uh, delayed development, and my lack of like career development, my lack of education, and
Mm.
all these things that I thought would probably just make it so that I would never. And again, like still because of my delayed development, like my social skills now because of my project and my passion are pretty good now. But at the time, they weren't that great, and so my ability to meet people was still just like it was like bottom of the barrel. I was super introverted, and and I was just like I'm never gonna meet somebody that I'm going to want to be with or who will want to be with me. And I just like my life is just the start of my life has been delayed too long. I don't think I can reasonably start. And so I was just like, I was very, very, very hopeless. And yeah, so uh, I live in a camper van now. And
Mm,
during that time, I became interested in the camper van and started planning to build one. And also, I was also very suicidal. And I was also uh, planning to kill myself. And so yeah, in mid 2020, I almost killed myself. I had an attempt at suicide, and I didn't do it, but that was like a really pivotal moment because I learned a lot. And where should I take the story from here? So essentially, after after all that depression and the attempt at suicide, I started to get better. And one of the reasons was because I had a breakthrough about the understanding of why I was so sad and depressed and stricken with grief.
mm.
And so I have a theory about how grief works. I don't know if I should talk about it. What do you think?
Um, I was gonna take it into the philosophy of love. Um, and so I'm happy to take it in any direction that you wanted. Um, uh, did you want to share more about sort of um, like um, I think you shared a pretty good picture of like where you were in the depths of darkness. Um, Let me know if you want to share more about, uh, how you climbed out of it, some of the people that helped you climbed out of that hole,
Mm,
that uh, point of no return, if you will. And yeah, I think then it's a really good point to transition into some of the ideas that and realizations that came up about the philosophy of love because, really for me, as somebody who's listening to your story, you had all of these trials and tribulations, right? Growing up. And you had your first relationship, love, and that not working out, and like how kind of traumatic it was and how it was ended. It was like love was what pushed you into the black hole. And it's like love is what also rescued you, right? Through your realization in the universe and how it loves you. So uh, if that sounds good, feel free to share a little bit more about, how you came out of the hole and then transition to that. Does that sound okay?
yeah,
Great.
yeah. So um, I'll do my best to say this off the top of my head because it's been a while since I thought about it. But
Sure.
so my main realization about my grief and my depression that helped me start to come out of it was that I was choosing it. So this is how I think that grief works. You lose something that is important to you, and I think there's usually two manifestations of grief, and one of them, and this is one that I was doing, was that you focus on the thing that you lost really hard in order to affirm to yourself that it mattered to you. And in so doing, usually, um, that thing that you lost usually is filling a hole in your life. It's meeting a need. And when you focus on it after you've lost it, you prevent yourself from being able to find new things that will meet that need. So you get into a negative feedback loop where you are you're focusing on the thing that you lost and not getting the need that it met. And so you sort of just like take a nosedive, and things become worse and worse and worse. And and that's why grief is so debilitating. There's another possible path that you could also like deny that it meant anything to you, and but there's the same problem usually, which is that by denying that it meant anything to you, often you also will refuse to get that need met, because you're trying to insist that it doesn't mean anything, in order to delay the pain of loss. But in both cases, you are refusing to get your needs met, and that is why grief is so debilitating. And for me, and I think in the first case, generally speaking, the solution is to understand that by getting your needs met, you are not. It doesn't mean that the thing that you lost doesn't matter. That's never true. It just means that you matter, and that meeting your needs is important. And so, a big part of me recovering and healing from my depression was letting go of the thing that I lost, which in that case, it wasn't just the girl that I lost, although that was painful. It was really uh, letting go of all of the time and opportunities that I had lost in my life. At that time,
Mm,
I was 28 years old when I finally left my faith. And by the time I recovered from my depression, I was almost 30 years old, and or at least was starting to recover. Um, and I had to sort of let go and just be like, it's okay that the first 30 years of my life were wasted, you know, and uh, and not that that's a good. It's not that it's good, but it's just that like in order to move forward, I have to be okay with it. I have to be okay with moving on. And
mm,
yeah, so that was a really big and pivotal moment for me. And um, so I moved into my van. I was still very depressed, but slowly getting better, not suicidal anymore. And
yeah,
uh, I moved out to the Bay Area. I was bouncing around for a little bit. I got my first girlfriend in late 2020. Uh, I say first girlfriend because even though the other relationship where I first fell in love, I don't think I would say necessarily that she was my girlfriend yet. It was about 2 months maybe relationship, maybe a little bit less, and so it was very brief, and I would say we were dating, but not really like together, you know, and and so I got my first girlfriend. That lasted for about 9 months. I was in San Bruno, and in the van, and I was like slowly getting better. I was studying a lot of software stuff, and then I moved to San Francisco. I got another girlfriend, and this is where my transition into the philosophy stuff really started to take off because I was introduced to psychedelics for the first time by my
mm,
second girlfriend, and that was a really big and pivotal thing. It really opened my eyes, and I think the first time I did psychedelics was the first time I really truly realized that I could never be depressed again, or at least like that how little depression makes sense. And what I mean by that is that I had tremendous hope, and I really wish that I had tried psychedelics earlier because I think that there's a really strong chance that I never would have gone through the 2 years of pain and suffering of my depression, if I had a chance to glimpse other ways of approaching reality. And so, but also that my second girlfriend was just a profoundly impactful relationship. She's a really remarkable person. She's like an
Mm,
extremely talented socialite, and again, me like growing up super isolated and socially stunted, just being around her was just like illuminating. You know, just like I don't think I had ever seen up close someone with that level of social acumen work their magic, and for such a long period of time. And we were together for about 6 months, and when we broke up, it she had a profound influence on me. Like I think like I started to see the world differently because
mm,
I started to see that like there are some people who have just like tremendous social ability that who are doing way more with way less than other people. And so and then I also made another friend during that time, an extremely bright young guy. He's like I think he was 19 when I met him. And when I say extremely bright, I think he's like IQ, like genius level IQ, like extremely intelligent. He was like he's 19. He's never been to college. I think he graduated high school, but he was already working as an electrical engineer
mm,
without any like formal training. He just taught himself, and but also just like extremely multidisciplinary. This is the type of person who like picks up advanced disciplines for fun, you know, over a
mm,
weekend. And it was just like, and so I was really good friends with him for about a year and a half, and
mm,
that also relationship had a profound influence on me because like I many times was in situations with him where we would start with the same starting conditions, and he would make categorically different decisions and usually come out like 10 times better, like way better results with the same starting inputs. And I was like, what, he's got like better intuitions, like not just a little bit, like categorically, like orders of magnitude better intuitions than I do about how to live, about how to make decisions, about how things work. And um and it wasn't like and it was also like I could tell that it wasn't that he was like using more brain power to make decisions. Often they were like the simplest. It was the simplest stuff. It wasn't like it was like big brain time, not like advanced, complicated. It's just like he just sees it differently. He sees it differently, and because he sees it differently, he's just getting way more out of it. And I was like, what is it? What is it that he's seeing? Like, and also, so like, this is about 2 years ago, approximately, maybe a year and a half ago, was when I really started to I've always been sort of like philosophically inclined. I really like solving problems like this, um, and I was so I tried to start a startup for a while, an ed tech startup for a year and a half, and that fell through. And I was looking for something to do after that, and I was trying to get a job. I was looking for a software job again, and then I was also trying to date, and I was using the dating apps. And then at one point, like I turned 32 years old. I'm 34 now, and when I turned 32, I found like suddenly and abruptly the amount of attention that I was getting on the dating apps like dropped off a cliff. Like I went
mm,
from getting like I don't know, let's say something like 10 matches a week across all of the platforms to like one, um, or sometimes zero. And I was like, this is like for someone who's like introverted and not like able to meet people in the wild, you know, like the dating apps are like my lifeline for dating, and they weren't working anymore. And I was like, holy shit, like I really need to learn how to meet women, and like have better social skills. And I was asking these questions like, who can tell me how to do it? And so like I had this example from my previous ex who's like a really talented socialite, and also this other guy who's really young and super bright and just had like way like better intuitions about how to make decisions. And I was like, obviously there are people who know how to do things better than I do, But also, I don't think they can explain it. Like neither of them, when asked, would give any sort of intelligible answer about like how it is that they're doing what they're doing. They just know, you know. And I was like, I don't know how to do it. I can't describe it. Or like I don't know anyone who can describe it. And also, I've always been a voracious reader and also like voracious consumer of podcast stuff. And I love psychology. I love philosophy and just like from like years and years of consuming all of the high level content that I can about everything interesting. I already know without even asking, without even doing the research, that there aren't really people who can describe this. And so I was like, I was thinking about it in my free time while I was looking for work about a year and a half ago. Uh, and then I started to make progress. I was thinking things like what is romance, how to flirt, how to like introversion, extroversion. How do you like? I was an introvert and I wanted to be an extrovert, and or at least not. I don't think I wanted to be an extrovert. I just didn't like being an introvert. Like I could tell it was limiting. I could tell that like it wasn't serving me, and um, and but also just like there's like a dominant ways that people talk about these things like introversion is okay, also like it's part of your personality. Neither of those things I think are really true. Introversion is probably not okay. Like if you have the option to be an extrovert, if it's equally easy to be an extrovert, it's really not okay to be an introvert. It's dramatically limiting. And um and And so I was thinking about all this stuff and I started to make progress. And then after I started to make progress, I realized like I'm onto something. Like I am describing things that are pivotal, foundational, and powerful. And I should probably shift focus away from looking for software work into this philosophy stuff full time. So that's what I did. And I've been working on it for about a year and a half. And yeah, it's going really well. I'm really profoundly grateful and happy and thrilled to be working on what I'm working on. This is, I think, easily like the best year and a half of my life. And also just like the most fun and the most exciting time that I have ever had. Which, to be fair, I don't think I've had a lot of good times, but um, but potentially like I don't know. I think I'm living like by comparison to like starting at like living like honestly like a medium bad life. I think I'm living not just like medium good, but like great, like potentially like the best kind of life that you can have. I'm really excited with how it's going. But yeah, you should ask another prompt question. Tell me what it looks
Well, no worries. I think you've done a great job, and I'd like to bring it home by sharing something that you shared in our time together before we end for the day. But um, I remember when we were together, you'd shared, and you touched on it, when you were talking about the philosophy of love and how through your trying time, right, and this person who you very much connected with, um, and then who broke up with you, you found your love for the universe. People call it different things. Some people call it God, some people call it others. And because ultimately, people can give up on you. But our connection and our love that the universe gives us is eternal. And one of the big things that you realized was this element of antagonism, where um, ideal love, great love, is a love that pushes you to make you stronger. It pushes you to align with yourself. It pushes you to evolve and grow. And, you know, um, struggle is the meaning of life, you know? And I think you acknowledge that, you know, despite all of these changes, there's still struggle in your life. However, you have grown and evolved a lot, and you feel more aligned that your day to day and your journey uh, is in alignment with your destiny, your path, as a result of your the love that the universe has for you, your relationship with the universe, which has defined your philosophy of love. And ultimately, one of the things that you said that I want to end this episode on is that despite all the hardships and you having reached rock bottom, as it relates to the destitution and the hopelessness. Coming out of that, what you've realized is that things have never gotten so bad that they have been unbearable. You know, as long as you are putting your energy on um, trying to align with yourself to be a better version of yourself. And I think that that is, you know, very wise. And I thank you for all that you have been through, all the trials and tribulations, and you not giving up, and you just persevering, because it has brought us to this moment. Um, that, I'm very honored to share the space with you. With that, I want to thank you for, being here with me today. And not just that, but, all the time that went into creating today's episode. And last but not least, I want to thank our audience, our audience without whom we would not be here. And, their attention, and would love to hear from our audience. If you have any thoughts about today's episodes, our social media is linked, or reach out, would love to hear from you. Um, with that, thank you so much for being here, Farley. I really appreciate it. I wish you all the best. Um, Thank you. And to our audience, till the next episode, I wish you love and light, love and light. Oh, yeah, love and light. Toodles!